In the autumn afternoon of November 6, 1869, in a small field in New Brunswick, New Jersey, two collegiate teams played an English sport called football. While bearing the moniker, it was not the game we know today. There were no quarterbacks, no forward passes, no end zones, or touchdowns. Players could only kick the ball or bat it with their limbs. But the game played that day in front of 100 spectators would grow so big it would come to be known around the world as America's game. By 1869, Rutgers University had formed a spirited in-state rivalry with Princeton University, known then as the College of New Jersey. After losing a baseball game to Princeton by a score of 40-2, Rutgers sought revenge and challenged Princeton to a game of football. The game was played using modified rules from the London Football Association's rules for association football. According to the rules, the number of players could vary. That day in New Brunswick, the teams fielded 25 players on either side. Kicking and heading were used to advance the ball. Most importantly, no running with or throwing the ball. Scores were marked when a team successfully kicked the ball through the opponent's goal post. The first team to score 6 points was declared the winner. Rutgers won 6-4 in what became known as the first college football game. The game closely resembled what we now know today as soccer. Soccer at the time was a British nickname for association football to distinguish it from rugby football, a version of the game that allowed running with the ball in one's hands. In 1874, Harvard played Montreal's McGill University under the rugby rules. Players from Harvard enjoyed the game's rules so much that 2 years later, representatives from Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and Columbia agreed to adopt most of the Rugby Football Union rules. As the years went on, football started to break away from its English predecessors. One man more than any other turned this game into American football. His name was Walter Camp, a Yale player and later coach. A rules pioneer, Camp understood that the game needed structure, clear possession, clear yardage, clear consequence. In 1880, he pushed through 2 rules that reshaped everything. First, 11 players per side, down from 15. Second, a formal concept of possession. In rugby, the chaos of a scrum determined who had the ball. Camp said no. One team gets the ball, which they keep until they give it up. 2 years later, the game faced a new problem. Teams had discovered they could simply hold the ball, running meaningless plays, never trying to advance, in order to kill time and force a tie. Camp's answer was the down and distance rule. If a team fails to advance 5 yards in 3 tries, they surrender possession. To track those 5 yards, officials painted lines across the field, 5 yards horizontally and 5 yards vertically. They called it the Gridiron. By the late 1800s and 1900s, football came under public scrutiny. At that time, the game was played with no protective equipment or helmets. Fatal concussions, fractured skulls, and broken spines were the result of a deadly, unregulated play, the flying wedge, derived from real military tactics. Several iconic rivalry games were suspended due to violence. Most notably, the Harvard-Yale game was barred from 1895 to 1897, and the Army-Navy game from 1894 to 1898. In 1905, the Chicago Tribune published the year's football death harvest. It attributed 19 deaths and 137 severe injuries to the game. President Theodore Roosevelt, the man widely credited as the man who saved football, made his position clear: rid the game of excessive violence, or he would work to abolish it. While he had no real authority to do so, his influence led to a meeting in New York City of more than 60 schools. Out of those meetings came the Intercollegiate Athletic Association. the forerunner to the NCAA, and 30 major rule changes. One of these rules would open up the game in ways no one would quite anticipate: the forward pass. The first legal pass was thrown on September 5, 1906, by St. Louis University player Bradbury Robinson. It fell incomplete, and under the rules of the time, it was a turnover. For the next 7 years, passing was developed but stayed on the margins of the game. In the summer of 1913, two Notre Dame players, Knute Rockne and Gus Duray, spent their off-season working as lifeguards on a beach along Lake Erie in Sandusky, Ohio. Between shifts, they practiced the spiral pass. That fall, Notre Dame utilized a passing offense that helped them beat heavily favored opponents, most notably Army. By the 1930s, the game grew from regional conferences to a national stage. The Associated Press released rankings of the country's best teams and crowned a national champion at year's end. The best schools were invited to compete in bowl games. By 1940, there were 5 major college bowl games: the Rose, Sugar, Cotton, Orange, and Sun Bowls. While college football continued to be the nation's darling, it took years for the professional game to grab America's heart. In 1920, representatives from 14 pro clubs gathered at a car dealership in Canton, Ohio, and formed the American Professional Football Association. For president, they elected Jim Thorpe, an Olympic gold medalist and a member of the Sac and Fox Nation. 2 of those 14 founding teams still play today: the Decatur Staleys, which was later renamed the Chicago Bears, and the Racine Cardinals, who are now the Arizona Cardinals. In 1922, the league became the National Football League. 10 years later, they added a championship game. By 1959, the American Football League was formed. The rival league forced the NFL to compete for players, fans, and television rights. On January 15, 1967, the first AFL-NFL World Championship game was played between the Green Bay Packers and the Kansas City Chiefs. 3 years later, the 2 leagues merged and the championship game was renamed. They called it the Super Bowl. The Pittsburgh Steelers and the New England Patriots are tied for the record for the most Super Bowl wins, 6 each.
It's good! It's good! And the Patriots are Super Bowl champions!
Today, there are 32 professional football teams and 266 Division I college teams in the United States. On average, 25 million households turn into football on Sunday night. Back on that autumn afternoon in 1867, 100 people watched 50 men kick a ball across a muddy field in New Brunswick, New Jersey. Since then, no sport has reinvented itself to be more deliberately American than football.